You guys remember when Trump held a White House event with the families of the kids who were all viciously murdered by illegal immigrants, and of all things, the media flipped out because his signature was on the photo of their dead children. Oh, who puts their signature on photos of dead children? He's an arrogant bore. He's an egomaniacal pig. Who does that? Well, did anyone stop to think for a moment that perhaps the families actually wanted the president's signatures on the photos and that maybe the president was asked to sign the photos? Did anyone contact the White House to find this out? Did anyone ask the families themselves? No, of course not. They did not do anything. They didn't reach out at all. Not one quote-unquote real journalist even bothered to ask. So we did, and I bet you can guess what the answer was. So if you guys remember, the White House held an event hosting the 11 angel families whose children, they all suffered unspeakable, horrible deaths at the hands of illegal immigrants. And the president went, he signed large photos of the parents' kids in the Oval Office before the event. Now, when the media saw this, they ignored the family stories and they immediately made this about the signatures instead of the families who have been permanently separated from their kids. They care so much about separation, right? These parents were permanently separated from their kids because they were killed by illegal immigrants. These people will never see their kids again, and it is a result of our broken immigration system. But the media, they don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about any of that. Instead, they wanted to talk about the signatures.
And this was really a weird thing. I don't know what normal people do this, because I've never seen it my entire life. Trump autographed the photos of their deceased loved ones.
You couldn't tell from the voice that was Joe Scarborough. Really, Joe Scarborough. That's the lead for you guys? And Twitter, they went even further. They said, quote, "This man is a sociopathic ghoul." That was author Patrick S. Tomlinson writing on Twitter. And filmmaker James Gunn wrote, "This tone-deaf oaf actually autographed photos of murdered children?" Another writer on Twitter, Johnny McNulty, wrote, quote, "He really will put his name on anything." And yet another writer by the name of James B. Jones wrote, quote, "So Donald Trump signed the photos that the bereaved parents are holding at his bull blank press conference. Donald Trump autographed headshots of dead children. This is a thing he did. Holy effing blank." Well, holy effing blank, did you ever think perhaps they wanted his signature there? And that Trump, not the type, didn't just go and say, "Hey, I'm so important, I'm going to put my name on everything." Sadly, journalists who should know better were completely incurious on this as well. And they were intentionally so, I maintain, because they want to make Trump look as supercilious as possible, even if it means not doing their jobs. And the reason is because these families who have lost their kids, who have been permanently separated from their kids, these families, they provide a counter-narrative to every myth about immigration that the left is trying to push right now. These families are proof that it's not just the best and brightest who are coming across the border into this country, and it is absolute bunk. It is not true that illegal immigrants aren't committing crimes in sanctuary cities. A Hill writer, Morgan Stalter, wrote, quote, "It is unclear when Trump autographed the images or if the families requested it." Well, it would be a lot clearer, Morgan, had you simply asked. The White House said through Dan Scavino, the White House social media director, and clarified that Trump autographs were requested by the family members after their private meeting and visit to the Oval Office. And since no one from the negligent media, completely negligent media, felt the need to ask about this, we did. So including debunking this thing, we think it's important to tell these stories because no one is paying attention to these stories. So we're going to debunk the photos, but we're also going to shed light on stories like this woman you see right here, Sabine Durden, who lost her son Dominic in a fatal car crash caused by an illegal immigrant in California. The illegal immigrant, he took a wrong turn. He was driving an unlicensed truck and struck her son's motorcycle. Son was killed. And this was the only son she has. Sabine says she has no other family except for this son. He's dead now. That is it for her. So we contacted Sabine, and she told us, quote, "I asked myself if he would please do me the honor to sign the picture of her son. He gladly agreed and obliged. The other angel parents also asked for his signature on their poster. She said, it's a true treasure to me. How very sad that signature on our pictures is now an issue instead of the reason why we only have pictures left." You don't hear that being told on MSNBC. And here's Sabine explaining why she would want the president's name on a photo of her son. It has nothing to do with President Trump's ego.
Our president and vice president, boys, my family of Aviac, They rallied behind us. They were the only ones and gave us a little light. I was going to end my life. I had no purpose. But President Trump coming down that escalator that day and talking about illegal immigration stopped me in my track. Make sure you get our stories out. I brought my son. This is what I have left, his ashes. I wear his ashes in a locket. This is how I get to hug my son. So remember when you go home and hug your kids, that there are many of us, thousands of us, who don't get to do that anymore. And let's work together and get this done. All politicians, I don't care what side you're on, you don't want your child in a casket or in an urn.
Does anyone want that? If not, then get her story out there. I mean, instead, we're talking about signatures. But we here at CRTV, we are doing what we can to get her story out. Steve Ronnebeck was another angel parent whose picture was signed by the president. He heard from his ex-wife on the phone that there had been an incident at the local QT. And his greatest fear on the phone with his ex-wife was that something had happened to his son. Here's his story.
As I got out of the Jeep, one of his other managers was getting out of his car as he saw me drive up. You know, I can remember asking, "Where's Grant? Where's my son?" And the tears were coming out of his eyes, and I knew Grant was gone. Apolinar Altamirano had come in and wanted to buy cigarettes. Altamirano then pulled a gun and pointed it at Grant. Grant immediately offered up the cigarettes. And Altamirano then shot him point blank in the face.
You don't hear that from the media. Instead, you're hearing about the signatures. So we contacted Steve about the photos so that we could clear the record on what actually happened with the photos, which apparently no one else wanted to do. And Steve confirmed to us that the families asked President Trump to sign their pictures. Quote, "The president did not offer, he was requested to sign them," Steve told CRTV. Chris Stansbury, another person, lost his daughter, Tiara Stanberry. She was only 18 years old. She lived in Ottumwa, Iowa. And she'd always dreamed of lying in the sand under the sun. She finally got her chance to do that, and she took a trip to LA. Took the trip with her boyfriend. She was in a building that collapsed in a fire after the fire was set by what prosecutors say was an illegal immigrant. She died in that fire, and as a result, Chris will never see her again. He'll never get the chance to see his daughter again. They are permanently separated. If they care so much about family separation, why are they not talking about this story? We had to talk to Chris about the signatures, though, because that's what they want to talk about. And Chris told us, quote, "All of us families asked President Trump to sign the photos." Now, we've talked about Laura Wilkerson. Laura Wilkerson's son was killed by an illegal immigrant, and Nancy Pelosi had the audacity to look this woman in the eye and tell her that illegal immigrants, they aren't committing crimes. Told a woman whose son was killed by an illegal immigrant, they don't commit crimes. This exchange is incredible. Watch.
In 2010, one of the illegals slaughtered my son.
I'm so sorry.
He tortured him, he beat him, he tied him up like an animal, and he set him on fire. And I am not a one-story mother. This happens every day because there are no laws enforced at the border. We have to start giving American families first.
Thank you for channeling your energy to help prevent something like that from happening. But I do want to say to you that in our sanctuary cities, our people are not disobeying the law.
How can she say that to someone who's looking her in the eye talking about her kid who was killed by an illegal immigrant? How can she say that to someone's face? But clearly Wilkerson is no stranger to a political agenda getting in the way of truth. She's used to this stuff, and she talked to us. We reached out to her, and Wilkerson told us, quote, "It has nothing to do with his ego. All of the families would much rather be at home with our children and never know President Trump. But since Trump administration is bringing light to the issues that they face, that's the only way these families, these mothers, these fathers are able to get their stories out. So hopefully your family, my family, any family out there, they don't have to experience these terrible tragedies." And the left is ignoring it. They are focusing on his autograph on the photos. Mr. Ronnebeck is completely correct when he said this at the event.
You know, you don't hear these stories, and some of our media won't talk to you about it. But this is permanent separation.
If only more people in the media, on the left, on the right, that should be bipartisan, were willing to cover these stories instead of made-up stories about Trump's ego and his signature, we might have a shot at actually starting to mend the permanent family separation crisis everyone allegedly is concerned about. But instead, we're talking about this.